What is up, hackers? Welcome back to another episode of Hack Crypto. We hack all of our crypto education. If you guys are brand new here, be sure to be subscribed with notifications on. And in this episode, I'm going to be going over the top 5 real world asset projects, or RWA, in this space. Now, tokenization has been around since the early 2000s. When I was doing research on the history of it, basically it was built as a mechanism to protect information initially. And then in 2017, it really popped off where people were tokenizing all different types of real world assets. When I'm referring to real world assets, I'm referring to artwork, I'm referring to real estate, of course, as something that I am extremely interested in my personal investments. And of course, you have all different types of assets, like your luxury items, your collectibles, your watches, all of that. Now, RWAs is just a buzzword that the crypto space has created to shrink it down, but real world assets at its core is effectively taking a physical asset, breaking it apart into a bunch of small pieces that people can own, or shares. And this is tokenization at its core. So when we talk about real world assets like real estate, you could buy a fraction of a property. Now, there's been a ton of companies that have come out over the last 5 years that have attempted to do these types of mechanisms where they're attaching it to real world assets with NFTs, all different types of things where you can redeem it and all that. But there are a couple here that I want to mention today that are taking new approaches, and the hype wave in this space is real. When it comes to any sort of new buzzword where it's DPIN or all these things come out, everybody just immediately runs towards it. It is real. Like, a lot of people DM'd me about RWAs and have talked all about this. So I wanted to dive into these top 5. This is not a sponsored overview of these. I'm just really interested in real estate specifically. And I love the idea of breaking it apart into a bunch of shares that people can own, lowering that barrier to entry immediately, and also giving institutions this ability to give it out and have almost like an IPO of assets. I think that it is a really cool bridge between the digital and physical world. I'm going to start with Centrifuge. This is a project that is by far the leader in the real estate RWA space. And what they do is they provide liquidity for the institutionals that are financing commercial real estate and housing in general. And I think that this is a really important project for the individual users and businesses. That's what I love about this tokenization concept, is this is applicable to businesses as well as individuals. And that's really the magic of this whole experiment that is Web3, is that people can use this product not only as an organization, but also as an individual, that levels that playing field. If you're getting access to the same thing that JP Morgan is getting access to, it's a super powerful concept. Something about Centrifuge that is interesting is they have something called the Tin Lake protocol. This allows individuals to provide liquidity and farm that juicy return and that yield. So I really like that they have that type of protocol that's built out. That's not only for individuals, but once again, for financial institutions to get some yield in return against those real world assets. Next up, we have Polymesh. This is a really interesting one that's specifically focused on the institutions. So this brings security and a lot of the hyper focused around institutional knowledge to the market. And I really like that they are focused solely on the institution. I know that I just mentioned literally that both businesses and individuals can use this, but I like it when people start with a focus. Like, they end up with, they know what their end customer looks like, they know what their end user's doing, and they can nurture that relationship and really expand from there. And this is trillions of dollars we're talking about here. When we talk about even just real estate, not even luxury collectibles and things like that and artwork, we're talking about trillions with a T with real estate. So I think Polymesh is well positioned to offer institutions this access to tokenization and really just specializing in regulated assets. So there's a lot to be said about that. I'm not going to dive too much into that. I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but regulated assets implies a lot of different types of assets out there, like stocks. Next up, we have Chintai. This is a really interesting project that focuses specifically on like a white labeling approach, which I really like because you can work with businesses to create their own secondary market. They create their own digital asset marketplace, and they can white label this RWA process with tokenization, which I really like that they're doing that. And they have this platform that allows you to go in, you can create high performance secondary market trading, which is super cool. They have cap table management, reporting, all this really cool functionality for the businesses once they spin up that white label. And I'm really interested in the overall approach to white label, not only for businesses, but as an individual that has an audience. I think it is really cool that people can white label and approach this RWA concept in a new way. Automated compliance component here is super important. And across the board, when we're talking about real physical assets, compliance and regulations are a factor. So if you're watching this video, it's definitely important to do research on the compliance and the regulation around all of this. This is going to be a $1 trillion market over the next 20 years. And it's super important to understand the compliance side and the regulatory environment because it is ever changing, as we know, in the crypto space. But it is cool to see that companies like Chintai and others are focused on this automated compliance and really just focusing on compliance in general because it is coming, whether people like it or not. Tokenization of real world assets is already here, but it is going to get bigger, 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 bigger. And compliance is key. Next up, we have Ondo, which is a really interesting one where they're securely tokenizing all different types of assets. And I think that's what's really cool is that they focus a lot on digital collectibles. The digital collectibles and commodities space is what Ondo is focused on. Commodities, when we say that, we're talking about silver, we're talking about gold, physical commodities is really interesting to me. And of course, all these others are focused very much on commodities as well. You know, Chintai doing things with oil, and a lot of these different companies can do things with the assets themselves because businesses are using it. Like if businesses are your end user, they're going to be using it for all different purposes. So I really like what Ondo's doing. They're focused on the digital collectibles, real estate, and commodity space. And of course, you could do a bunch of different things on the blockchain, but focus is key here. And I like projects that are focused, and I like projects that are mainly focused on a couple. At the end of the day, what you need to do is focus on one and then expand. But Ondo's focused on those three specifically, which are trillions of dollars of assets sitting there waiting to be kind of fractionalized and owned by individuals and other businesses. Last, but most certainly not least, we have Mantra. Mantra is a really cool approach to this where it's tokenizing all different types, including art, real estate, commodities. Those are big markets, obviously. And all of these are correlated to real estate because I've been a real estate investor for many years now. I've been very bullish on everything that is the blockchain mixing with real estate. I remember interviewing the real T guys back in the day. And I think that this is such an underrated market where you're converging two huge industries. You have the blockchain space and the Web3 space, crypto, whatever you want to call it, and the real estate industry that's just old, slow moving, and just bureaucratic. So I think that these two, as they come together, are going to be really exciting. And merging these two is going to crack open trillions of dollars of value, not only to the individual owners that are buying the fractions and the shares of these properties, but also to institutions that want to own just slugs of apartment buildings and all the different pieces like a REIT, but except just openly on chain and open source. So those are the 5 that I want you guys to check out. This isn't financial advice. Do your research. They will all be linked below. And to recap, we had Centrifuge, we had Polymesh, we had our Chintai, we had our Ondo, and we had Mantra. Those are the 5. Definitely check them out with the link below. That is it for this episode. I will see you here on the next episode of Hack Crypto.